March 1789, 16 convicts left their work at the brick kilns without leave and marched to Botany Bay with a design to attack the natives and to plunder them of their fishing tackle and spears. They had armed themselves with working tools and large clubs. When they arrived near the bay, a body of Indians, who had probably not seen them set out and had penetrated their intention from experience, suddenly fell upon them. The description of events I've just read out was recorded by Lieutenant Watkin Tench, who goes on to say that the convicts' actions were interrupted by Marine officers. The convicts were brought back to camp for judgment and punishment. An Aboriginal by the name of Arabanu, who was being held captive at the time, observed the proceedings, and the lieutenant recorded the following. The whole group of convicts were ordered to be severely flogged. Arabanu was present at the infliction of the punishment and was made to comprehend the cause and the necessity of it. But he displayed on occasion the symptoms of disgust and terror only. I'm bringing up this story today because it's currently Reconciliation Week in Australia, and part of the process of healing is to do some serious truth-telling about the past. And so just to clarify a few points about the story I just read, I want to explain the convicts weren't punished because they had planned on attacking the Aborigines. They were punished because they had conspired to run away from their captivity. I'd also like to point out that Arabanu's disgust and terror at watching the flogging says something about our indigenous people's values. While Lieutenant Watkin tells us that Arabanu was made to comprehend the cause and the necessity of the flogging, we do not truly know how he perceived this. I might be wrong, but it's possible he did not even understand why the convicts were incarcerated in the first place. I imagine all Arabanu saw was a group of white fellas with guns and weapons who were hell-bent on controlling and terrorising other people. And his disgust at watching the flogging indicates he had empathy for those being harmed, and he had not witnessed anything like it before. So I'd also like to share a few more passages from the lieutenant's records, starting with his description of how Arabanu was captured in the first place. As I'm reading, you'll notice that the first colonialists referred to the indigenous Australians as being Indians. The Britons had begun colonising India about 3 decades earlier, and so in accordance with their understanding, all blackfellas were Indians. Several Indians were seen standing on the beach who were enticed by courteous behaviour and a few presents to enter into conversation. A proper opportunity being presented, our people rushed in amongst them and seized 2 men. The rest fled, but the cries of the captives soon brought them back, with many others to their rescue. And so desperate were their struggles that, in spite of every effort made on our side, only one of them was secured. The other effected his escape. The boats put off without any delay, and an attack from the shore instantly commenced. They threw spears, stones, firebrands, and whatever else presented itself at the boats. Nor did they retreat, agreeable to their former custom, until many muskets were fired over them. The prisoner was now fastened by ropes to the thwarts of the boat, and when he saw himself irretrievably disparted from his countrymen, set up the most piercing and lamentable cries of distress. I hope I don't need to explain how barbaric this abduction was. Imagine someone coming into your home, pretending to be nice and offering gifts, and then as soon as you let your guard down, one of your family members is taken away. Naturally, we would all put up a fight, and gunshots would most definitely frighten the best of us. Truth-telling of Australian history means confronting the fact that the colonialists treated blackfellas as less than human, while whitefellas assumed superiority based on biased assumptions of what civilised behaviour was. This attitude comes through really clearly in the following description of Arabanu being given a bath just after he was captured. To this succeeded his immersion in a tub of water and soap, where he was completely washed and scrubbed from head to foot, after which a shirt, a jacket, a pair of trousers were put upon him. Some part of this ablution I had the honour to perform in order that I might discern the real colour of the skin of these people. My observation then was, and it has been since confirmed in 1,000 other instances, that they are as black as the lighter caste of African Negroes. To prevent his escape, a handcuff with a rope attached to it was fastened around his left wrist, which at first highly delighted him. He called it bengadi, or ornament, but his delightment changed to rage and hatred when he discovered its use. It is fair to say that all humans desire freedom. Skin tone, age, gender, and any other attributes may vary from culture to culture or person to person, but the desire for personal agency is a constant. Hearing the accounts of how Arabanu was treated fills me with so much disappointment at how cruelly our indigenous people were treated. They were assumed to be stupid or just less than because their ways were different to white fellas. And so I think it's good to remember that they lived in harmony with each other for over 60,000 years before colonisation began. They had at least 250 different language groups which have been recorded. There are certain traditions and customs that unite all of these groups, while at the same time each country had its own unique features. And I'd like to add that they were not strictly patriarchal either. Their hierarchies were based on recognition of wisdom that honoured living in peace with each other and with the land. It really saddens me that white fellas assume superiority because they'd learned to dominate others through force and fear. But even more insidious is the ways in which they manipulated the Aborigines through coercive methods. The example of getting close to the mob by being courteous and offering presents before trying to steal one of them is just one of many in Lieutenant Watkin's accounts. He also describes how they paraded Arabanu on a boat as an example to other Aboriginals as a means of demonstrating what would happen if they tried to retaliate against their force. On behalf of all of my ancestors who may have been involved in this type of atrocious behaviour in Australian history, I am sorry. And please believe me when I say I understand just how painful it is to have a white fella come along, tell you that your child is not your own and that your worth as a human is less than simply because you disagree with someone else's notion of righteousness. Controlling others through intimidation is never righteous. Losing my daughter to a cult is not the same as hundreds of thousands of adults and children being taken from their families for multiple generations. But there is a connection point in there. Indigenous and non-Indigenous Australians, I hope we can all truly reconcile through the agreement that controlling other people through overt and covert control mechanisms is not civilised. It is not okay when it happened back in the colonial days, and it's not okay when it happens in high control groups and cults today. And so to end, I want to thank all the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who have stayed true to their traditional values of peace and harmony. We white fellas have a lot to learn, and examples like that of Arabanu's display of empathy and resilience are really inspirational.